Dave.
Good morning. Welcome to today's item of agenda, which is the hearing of representatives of the Association of Italian Organizations for International Cooperation and Solidarity, AOI, on the situation in Gaza and the Palestinian territories. On behalf of the colleagues, I would like to thank you, welcome you, and give you the floor. Good afternoon, Chair. I'm here with President of AOI, Silvia Stilli, who will be speaking right after me. And we would like to start off by thanking the Commission for giving us this opportunity to take part in this hearing and giving this delicate issue. The closeness of Parliament is pivotal, is crucial for us. And we would like to express our regret for what is happening in the Middle East. The fight against terrorism cannot envisage the destruction of schools, homes, and facilities that are protected by humanitarian law, and military threat of thousands of civilians, and the bombing of homes in the Gaza Strip. And the events of October 7th and following October 7th have demonstrated that the strongest army in the Middle East have been unable to protect Israel. War has never led to peace, especially in that area. It has radicalized positions, and without peace and a life of dignity, the Palestinian people nor Israel will have the peace that it deserves. And we are here because we are asking diplomacy to step in to help in negotiations. And as humanitarian activists, we are asking you to act now to stop this slaughter. Gaza was destroyed, and even in normal times, Gaza depends on external support for water, resources, and other types of infrastructure. And Israel has interrupted water supply for months now, and is not allowing access of basic goods. And for this reason, there are ambulances that don't have petrol. There are hospitals that don't have electricity, civilians who don't have food, that don't have water, and don't have a safe place where they can hide. These are only some of the consequences, unspeakable consequences of this collective punishment that the entire Gaza population is victim of, and especially with the coming winter season and the lack of water and food, there is an increase in the possibility of diseases to spread. And I will leave the floor to our president, Silvia Stilli. Official data of the UN from October 7th to today show us that 7,000 Palestinians have been killed, 15,900 in the Gaza Strip and in West Bank, including 6,000 children. In the same time frame, there are 1,200 victims in Israel, including 33 children, boys and girls. And today, we have invited some speakers who we would like to leave the floor to, because they will give us an idea of the areas where they are currently operating. Youssef Hamdouna, a representative of Educate, and we also have partners of NGOs that we are collaborating with, that we are speaking with in Israel and Palestine. But I call the Italian government to act as a diplomatic negotiator for a ceasefire to ensure the protection of the civil population, urging Israel to allow basic needs, food and water, to enter Gaza, withdraw the cut of water supply to the Gaza population, and revoke the evacuation orders that have been issued starting October 7th and allows the transfer of wounded people from Gaza in other areas where they can be treated, and also urge Israel as occupant as an occupant role to stop all activities, military activities and belligerent activities, and also enable the release of hostages, as well as supporting and achieving the activities of UN organizations and collaborate with the inquiry committees on the Palestinian territories that are occupied, including East Jerusalem, with the Prosecutor's Office of the International Criminal Court, considering the violations of international law. And Italy is also urged to support the activities of organizations, civil society organizations that have been operating in the area for years. And I will leave the floor to my colleagues.
Buongiorno, Presidente.
Good morning, Chair. And I will be speaking first. If I'm not mistaken, I am Professor Alice Riccardi. I teach international law at the Università Roma 3. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this invitation. I have a few minutes available, and I will be giving you a legal framework within which we are dealing with the current crisis and war. This is a very complicated and delicate framework, and there are a series of disciplines that are framing this conflict, especially in terms of what Israel is doing and what Hamas is doing, international law and the UN Charter. As far as humanitarian international law, this envisages a special political regime, the right to occupation, according to which a territory is considered occupied when it is under the authority of an enemy army. Palestine, and I refer to the entirety of the territories of the Palestinian territories, so Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem, is under occupation. And this situation has not changed since the war crimes that have been committed by Hamas, members of Hamas on October 7th. In particular, for the Gaza Strip, Israel is still controlling the water supply, terrestrial and air borders, and the magnitude of Israeli control has been made even more evident since October 7th, and Israel was able to interrupt communication, electricity, petrol, water supplies to the Gaza Strip, and Israel was able to prevent humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip. The legal regime of this occupation imposes obligations on Israel that are directly linked to the control that it has over Palestine, including the duty of the occupant power to allow access of the population to basic needs, food, medicine, water. This is envisaged in Article 45 of the Fourth Convention of Geneva. And Article 49 of the same convention envisages that when these goods are not sufficient, the occupant power must do everything that it has in its power to allow these goods to enter. For example, the International Red Cross. This is one of the tools that it has at its disposal. An additional norm is Article 49 of the Geneva Convention, according to which Israel cannot transfer the Palestinian population with force. And then there are a series of other duties resulting from armed conflict. And of course, these are numerous, so I will not be going over all of them, but I will just reiterate some of the most influential one, the principle of proportionality, distinction, precaution, and, last but not least, humanity. The events following October 7th show us exactly what has been happening, especially regarding victims. Victims are almost always civilians. 2/3 of these are women and children, and 60% of homes have been destroyed, demolished, and this raises doubts on the respect of the principles by Israel. The duty to respect humanitarian law has to be respected, notwithstanding other events. And the General Assembly of the United Nations of October 27th of this year and the resolution of the UN Security Council of November 15th, both of these bodies have asked the parties involved in the conflict for a ceasefire. They have asked for humanitarian corridors from Gaza, access that is safe, that is free, that is without obstacles, so as to allow civilians to access basic needs, basic services. And in particular, this applies to third countries, third parties. That means our country as well, Italy. Italy has a duty to due diligence and implement proactive measures to urge the parties involved to cease these violations. And based on this, the General Assembly has made a call, appealed for a ceasefire on all fronts. The principle of self-determination of people. This is a principle that belongs to the Palestinian population, the Palestinian territories, as reaffirmed by the United Nations, included in the resolution of 2016, which envisages a series of obligations not only by Israel but other states of the world. Israel must cease all forms of violation of this right, so withdrawing troops from occupied territories and offering reparation damages. The International Criminal Court states that all countries of the international community, including Italy, have interest in protecting this principle, this right, and not recognizing any violations of this principle. They must offer help in respecting this right, and all states of the international community must cooperate in order to end these violations. For example, a third party, Italy, for example, could promote activities to stop these violations and offer damages of some sort. For example, the independent commission that was already mentioned, or the promotion of other tools. And I would also like to reaffirm that the UN General Assembly on December 2022 adopted a resolution asking the International Criminal Court for a comment on what is happening in the occupied territories, and there a first hearing that has been planned for February 2024. I thank you for your attention, and I am available if you have any questions.
Guy Shalev.
Now we have Guy Shalev, who is the Executive Director of Physicians for Human Rights Israel, and maybe our colleagues can introduce themselves so I don't have to interrupt you.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this important hearing today. Let me first begin by introducing myself and Physicians for Human Rights Israel. I'm Guy Shalev, a medical anthropologist and the director of PHRI. The October 7 Hamas attack caught me and my family in bad timing. We don't have a bomb shelter in our apartment in Tel Aviv, so have been moving from place to place since. This has been very difficult to my 2-year-old girl and my 9-month pregnant partner. But we're safe, something that unfortunately cannot be said about the Israeli victims of the Hamas attack and the people of Gaza since. PHRI, Physicians for Human Rights Israel, we are a human rights organization that works to address the equal rights to health of everyone living in Israel, Palestine. We tend to the needs of asylum seekers in Israel, prisoners in Israeli prisons, Israelis from the social and geographic periphery, and to Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Human rights for all. Since the October 7 attack, we are in emergency mode, as the right to health of many is being violated on grand scales. As soon as October 9, we were the first to open a clinic in the Dead Sea to provide services to the Israeli evacuees from Kibbutz Be'eri, who were in great suffering and trauma, while the Israeli state was too slow to do so. We published reports on the Hamas attacks on Israeli medical teams violating their protection under international humanitarian law, and on the evidence of sexual and gender-based violence perpetrated by Hamas. We also work to support the non-citizen victims of the October 7 attack, mainly agricultural workers from Thailand, some of whom were murdered, others kidnapped. Since October 7, we have been very vocal about the immediate need to release the hostages. We worked closely with the hostages' families to try to make sure they were getting the medication they needed. Contacted our partners in Gaza, in the Gaza health system, and provided them with lists of medication, and we tried to send over cases of medication. In addition, we've been working to document and try to prevent Israeli violations of the human rights of Palestinian prisoners in its custody. Since the October 7 attacks, we've been receiving reports from families and legal representatives of Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, all describing incidents of severe violence at the hands of prison officers. With 6 Palestinians who died in custody, we came to the realization that the Israeli prison service is no longer operating a lawful incarceration system, but acting as a vindictive body with no oversight. We're appealing to Israeli courts and calling on our partners all over the world to save the lives of prisoners in Israeli prisons. Nevertheless, the most imminent human rights crisis that is unfolding is caused by the unprecedented aggressive Israeli attack on Gaza. Especially in the past 2 months, we have been documenting and trying to prevent the unlawful Israeli attacks on the Gazan healthcare system. We have been worked closely with doctors and mental health professionals in Gaza for the past 35 years. Since the Israeli blockade of Gaza and 16 years ago, we have operated monthly delegations into Gaza, providing aid and training local professionals. So we know personally the doctors who are now risking their lives to treat the many injured and sick in the Strip. We are maintaining daily communication with them to learn about the up-to-date situation in Gaza and try to get the world to intervene to protect healthcare facilities and staff and to basically save the lives of uninvolved civilian population in Gaza. Medical personnel and patients in the Gaza Strip face a severe threat from the complete military siege, direct strikes, and lack of power, drinking water, fuel, and essential medical supplies. At least 26 of the 35 hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including its only cancer hospital, are now no longer operational. Many more health facilities have been harmed, and essential drugs and medical supplies are severely lacking. The collapse of hospitals in Gaza has decreased bed capacity from 3,500 before October 7 to 1,400 presently. In addition, their capability to address the urgent needs of the countless wounded and ill has dramatically diminished. Only one of the current operational hospitals in Gaza can treat critical trauma patients and perform complex surgeries. 8 weeks have gone since Hamas launched its assault, and the hospitals in Gaza are proving to be a substantial target in Israel's offensive. The WHO recorded more than 160 direct attacks on healthcare in Gaza since October 7. The Israeli military is disregarding the protected status of health facilities and personnel in Gaza, preventing them from providing critical care and directly invading and assaulting them. Since the start of Israel's offensive, its military has ordered the evacuation of hospitals under threats, while failing to provide safe evacuation corridors. As a result, civilians have been killed, even while traveling through routes the Israeli military ensured would be safe. Beyond the many injuries, the lack of basic supplies and hygienic conditions, and the severe public health crisis, the war has exacted a severe toll on medical personnel. 280 healthcare workers have been killed. 31 were detained. and many more struggle to function after their family members, including children and spouses, were killed and their homes destroyed. In light of these circumstances, the ceasefire must urgently be renewed to prevent the further killing of thousands of civilians and the harming of medical personnel. We also call for the wounded to be evacuated outside the Gaza Strip to countries prepared to receive them, and medical workers from abroad who are willing to help must be allowed to enter Gaza. It is important to emphasize that Israel's harming of medical personnel and facilities constitutes a violation of international humanitarian law and must be investigated as such. I'm speaking to you from Tel Aviv today, hoping your voice can be heard to protect humanity. Our voices are getting weaker and weaker. Israeli media is showing the Israeli public a very limited picture of what the government is doing in Gaza. We appeal to the Israeli authorities, the courts, and the public. Still, the pain and anger after the October 7 Hamas attack made it almost impossible to address the unprecedented disaster in Gaza. Incitement and calls for revenge come from the highest ranking of the government. But we must protect the rights of over 2 million children, women, and men in Gaza who are not to be blamed for Hamas crimes. It is the role of Israel's allies, such as Italy, to call for an immediate ceasefire. This is the only way to prevent greater loss of life, more pain and suffering for everyone in our region. Thank you again for listening.
Grazie Guy, grazie Alice prima.
Thank you, Guy Shalev, and thank you to Alicia. And now I will leave the floor to Hanan Ashrawi from the MITFA Palestinian Initiative for the Promotion of Global Dialogue and Democracy.
Bisogna attivare il microfono.
Could you just double check that your microphone is on? We can't hear you. Ms. Ashrawi, could you double check your microphone is on? Okay, we can hear you. Okay.
I thought you would unmute me. Okay. I said thank you for inviting me to address you today. And I find it extremely difficult to talk about these issues because, like all Palestinians, I am personally, as well as we are all collectively, traumatized. We are living in a situation of tremendous shock, of tremendous pain, as we watch unfolding day in and day out, night and day, people being Palestinians, being shelled, being killed, being bombarded, being burned, whole families totally destroyed. When we talk about numbers, you know, we talk about 16,000 killed, 8,000 under the rubble, injured. We talk about 42,000 injured, under the rubble are dead by now. It's something that is impossible for me to talk about in a dispassionate way or in an academic or analytical way. This is not an abstraction. These are our people, these are our lives. And let me remind everybody that history did not begin on the 7th of October. That for 75 years, Israel has been mistreating, ill-treating, torturing, and destroying Palestinians, Palestinian lives, Palestinian homes, and even Palestinian futures. And you cannot hold a whole nation captive and expect them to lie down and die quietly. The moment that October 7th took place, it's as if the world woke up and said there are Israeli victims. But there have been Palestinian victims for decades. In the last decade or so, 5,000 in Gaza were killed under siege by Israeli bombardment, by Israeli shelling and bombing and destroying whole neighborhoods. So let's not act surprised, my God, the horror of October 7th. No, my God, the horror of the Nakba, the horror of 75 years of being targeted and ill-treated and treated as though they are invisible, censured, outside the course of history or human intervention and international humanitarian law, while Israel has enjoyed full impunity. And not just impunity, but has been rewarded for its occupation. and has been aided and abetted, as we see now very clearly with the support of the US and mainly and Europe. This is something that doesn't go down well with Palestinians, because this dual process of eliminating and silencing and censoring Palestinians on the one hand, while giving Israel full impunity and rewards on another, has created a horrific situation of power asymmetry, of injustice, and of ongoing pain, unrelieved pain. And everything that has been done, whether politically or in any other way, was always cosmetic, with an underlying assumption of parity when there is none. There is no parity before the law. There is no equality for Palestinians. So part of the result of this abnormal situation was October 7th. And by committing more massacres, Israel was created how? Through a series of massacres, for heaven's sake. And dispossession and expulsion and uprooting of Palestinians in 1948. 750,000, if not more, were kicked out. That's why we are all traumatized, because the Nakba, the catastrophe, used to be our parents' heritage or our grandparents' heritage. Now it has become the problem and the issue of every single Palestinian. This is the Nakba. This is an ongoing Nakba of dispossession and expulsion, of pain, of massacres, of slaughter, and without any accountability. And the problem is it is taking place in plain sight. Everywhere everybody is seeing what the Nakba, that the Nakba is taking place. In 1948, yes, we didn't have social media and television and so on. We had the narratives of people, but now there are even Israeli historians dating back to the 80s who are revealing what the Nakba was, who are revealing the series of massacres. And there are testimonies of people who took part in it, in the same way as over 500 villages were totally destroyed in Palestine during the Nakba. So now when you are watching people being torn to pieces, and we are seeing this, and if I don't see it, I feel guilty that it's happening in the dark. I have to see it. And if I see it, the pain and the enormity of it is intolerable. And I'm telling you why I cannot address this in a dispassionate way. Most of us cannot speak, cannot even ask each other, cannot sleep, cannot ask each other, how are you? We stopped asking each other, how are you? Because Palestinians in Gaza in particular have nowhere to go. They have been under siege, but then you have monsters like Ben-Gvir and like even Gallant and so on, saying no water, no food, no shelter, no medicine, no fuel, nothing. So you are besieging a people and starving them to death and allowing them to die quietly. You cannot even have the choice of the way you want to die, because you can either die by direct shelling, and I think these are the lucky ones as they are being picked out, or you can die slowly under the rubble, or you can die as you are running away, or you can die by disease and deprivation, or you can die by starvation and thirst. And I have friends in Gaza who say we don't have food anymore. And they're all drinking tainted and polluted water. They don't have clean water. Anyway, I'm not going to give you all the horror of what life or non-life is like in Gaza. It is an ongoing torture. It is slaughter. It is, you round up people and then you shell them and you bomb them and you tell them go one place and then you shell them as they're running away and then you're trying to hurt them, as you call them, human animals. And then you shell them and you hurt them in the smallest area in Gaza, and then again you kill them. This is unacceptable, unconscionable, and I don't see why the world is not acting, why the world is talking, why there are, I mean, even statements like Israel has the right to defend itself. An occupier has the right to defend itself. An occupier has to be held accountable, has to face the consequences of his or her actions, not defend itself against its victims. And I don't see how you can say that, try to limit the number of civilians. What do you mean limit the number? Don't kill civilians, full stop. Don't kill civilians. And these are not abstractions numbers. I don't see how they jump immediately to a process of dehumanization, demonization, vilification, targeting Palestinians, again playing into the Israeli trope of the Palestinians as being non-human beings. This is what we're saying. So they do not have to face the consequences of their actions. The Israeli speaker said that the Israeli public is not seeing what's happening. How can you look yourself in the eye? How can you see yourself in the mirror? How can you sleep at night knowing that children are being picked up in pieces from the rubble? And we hear them and we see them by the thousands. As I said, 8,000 and the 42,000 who are injured. Do you think they can survive? And what kind of life will they have with these permanent injuries? In addition to the trauma, in addition to the pain. Now, this is one thing. It just needs immediate intervention. It doesn't need discussions. It doesn't need providing Israel with $14 billion and with more precision bombs and with bunker busters. The Americans, the Brits, the Germans, everybody's running, even your EU, what's her name, head. They all say we stand with Israel. So what do you stand with? What do you stand with? Carnage, slaughter, mass murder, occupation, impunity, total disregard for human lives and for the will of the international community. This is unacceptable. It cannot continue like this. And it became very clear to the Palestinians that the world has not just double standards, but the world is hypocritically racist. It has revealed lots of fault lines north and the global south, fault lines between east and west, white and non-white, Christian and non-Christian. These fault lines now are in full play against the Palestinians, who are invisible in many ways, except to us, except to fellow Palestinians. And I'm telling you, in the West Bank, there has been an ongoing system of ethnic cleansing, not like the massive, dramatic mass murder, but daily, an average of 5 Palestinians are killed in the West Bank, daily. And not just by the extremist armed settlers. People say you should, hold them to account.
Hanan, 8 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just, the West Bank is not exempt, is not excluded from the horrors and the tortures of the occupation. And now when you have this coalition, this lethal fascist Israeli occupation, Israeli coalition taking place with all the settlers being armed and with Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these guys saying, Palestinians should all be destroyed or expelled. The West Bank is undergoing daily home demolitions, daily entering into villages and camps, extrajudicial executions, destroying infrastructure, roads and water and electricity and sewage lines and so on. What is this? You hold people captive and you immediately try to make life intolerable for them. And you steal their land and resources. So no band-aids, please. There has to be the guts and the courage to acknowledge that Palestinians are equal, that international law applies, international humanitarian law applies equally to all, that the international community, whether singly as countries or collectively in the multilateral system, is going to act and act now. And by doing more of what led to this horrific situation, you are only going to make the situation worse. It is time to change course. It is time to reboot. It is time to understand that without such positive intervention and action, the realities here are going to be even worse, not just for the Palestinians and Israelis, but for the region and worldwide. Thank you.
Grazie Hanan.
Thank you, Hanan. Sorry for interrupting you. We're short of time. And now I'll give the floor to Joseph Andona. Apologies for the mistake I made. You are a member of Educate, and he just got back from Gaza a few weeks ago, so you can tell us all about it. Thank you.
Grazie. Sì, sono Youssef Hamdouna, operatore della ONG italiana Educate, ma sono anche cittadino palestinese, nato e cresciuto nella striscia di Gaza. Sono arrivato, come ha detto Silvia prima, qualche settimana prima del 7 ottobre in Italia, ovviamente lasciando nella striscia di Gaza tutti i miei familiari e tutti gli amici, tutti i colleghi di lavoro che si trovano attualmente sotto le bombe.
There's no interpretation, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sorry. Ca-
Secondo canale.
Due. Inglese, sì. Sì, sì. It's been 4 days now. That I'm trying to get in touch with my relatives, but I just can't get in touch with them. And I hope that all my loved ones, they're actually in total 57, they're the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and I hope that they're not on the rubbles of that house, as many other houses have been flattened by the bombs with the people under the rubble. I left many friends and many co-workers there. They flee this area and from one area to the other, they're just trying to find a safe place. But there's no such thing in the Gaza Strip. They have no food to give to their children. They have no medicines. They have no blankets to cover themselves because of the cold. And they all it's a death sentence for these people, basically. They're waiting to be executed in a way. This is something that is undescribable. It is unfathomable what it means to be today living under the bombs. It is impossible to describe. People who are there die because of these bombs. And the one who have survived to this day, die just the same. They have no hope. And they ask themselves, but what is the world doing? What are the people doing for this, because of this, to put an end to this? To tell you the truth, the people in Gaza have no hope, but they no longer trust the international community. And I want to be very blunt about this. Because the international community does not seem to be a third party. This silence by the international community is inexplicable. This is a silence which is killing each and every person which, as of today, has survived the bombs. And this is silence that we can't explain. All the people with whom I'm in touch with in Gaza, all these people saying, but where is the world? Where are the human rights? And they all ask themselves, why are they being discriminated against? The international community, and namely Europe, because of their reaction when it comes for to uphold the rights of the Ukrainian displaced, and they've acted very rightly so. They responded to this, but they're not uttering a single word. They think of themselves as being a category B category, lower category of people. This is what they feel in the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip, they all say, why? They can't understand why there's no one that can guarantee access to aid, a ceasefire, which as of today has not been asked for. And they're asking themselves, what still has to happen? How many more casualties how many more people have to die in the Gaza Strip for someone to say ceasefire? I know I only have a few minutes. And like many other people who are in the Gaza Strip who have left very little time before dying, and they are doing their best to reassure their loved ones, telling them lies. They're aware that they're telling them lies. No one is aware that they can come out, survive all of this, and be unscathed, remain unscathed by this. So what do Palestinians have to do so that we can be acknowledging our own rights, for our rights to be acknowledged? And this is my question. So many people have died, as Anand said, and thank you. We're not talking about figures. We're talking about human lives. We're talking about people. And many children don't have a family anymore, don't have their parents anymore. We have no idea what their life will be like in the future. And what we're asking the international community is not to bomb our hope. Please, please, our hope rests in your hands. You have to do something. You cannot kill our hope. Please. Thank you.
Grazie, Youssef.
Thank you, Youssef. Thank you. Are there any other requests for the floor?
Grazie, Presidente. Io penso...
Thank you, Chair. I think that after having listened to these testimonies, we have the duty to reflect and to ask ourselves many questions and understand how we can obtain a response, because I would like to offer my solidarity to the population of Gaza, to the men, women, children of Gaza who have no hope today. I would like to express my closeness to these people that are being punished. All of this has no precedent. What is happening has no precedent because we've never seen this in the number of so many deaths in such a short amount of time. There's no precedent in the fact that schools, ambulances, hospitals, physicians are being targeted, are being bombed. 112 colleagues of the UN were killed. All of this has no precedent, so we must express our solidarity and our sympathy and proximity to the people of Gaza. I would like to do this and thank Hanan Ashrawi for her testimony, for representing Palestine and Palestinian rights. And I would also like to thank Professor Youssef Hamdouna for his testimony, touching testimony, and I would like to thank the international organizations who work there, and thank you to our organizations, to AOI, thank you to the cooperation associations who have been working in Gaza. I met in Gaza in 2014 and are still there. They're still working hard thanks to local staff. Some of them also have Italian staff in the Gaza Strip. I want to thank them because they enable us to understand the horrors that are happening there. And we really are understanding that humanity is drifting We're drifting completely. The UN Emergency and Relief Coordinator in a television interview a few days ago with Christiana Manpour on CNN said that he has been traveling for years, witnessing humanitarian crises. The first was in Cambodia in the 1970s, and he said that he has never before seen this targeting and destruction, this targeting of civilians by an army. And that's what we're seeing here. And he has never before seen this, these types of atrocities. We need to understand how to overcome this situation. And even Italy, the Italian government, which has a good relationship with the Israeli government, Netanyahu was greeted by President Meloni, well, the President of the Council of Ministers, Prime Minister Meloni. Italy must do everything in its power to stop this, what is happening, because civilians, innocent people are being targeted, they're being killed, and this will end up having repercussions on all of us, all citizens, on Israeli citizens, on European citizens, and citizens of the world, because this will only lead to more hatred, more insecurity. So what for? We need to stop these actions because they don't even have an exit strategy. President Netanyahu said that he wants to set up settlements in Gaza, even though the international community reacted negatively to this possibility, because this would be a dramatic scenario in terms of implications. So I think that after this hearing, and I'm very sad to see that we don't have more colleagues here today, because this was a great opportunity to relaunch a discussion, a debate among us as well on this serious matter, to reach a shared solution, a shared action, to urge in some way the government that urge the government to be proactive in this situation. So what I would like to ask, and I would like to address this question to Professor Alice Riccardi, who spoke about the international law and roles and responsibilities. I would like to ask her a question on forced transfers, because these transfers that were imposed by Israel south, first towards Kanyun and now towards Rafah, how can these be considered? Were these a way to ensure safety to the population, or were they simply forced transfers of civilians, not for safety purposes, for safety reasons? So I would like to ask her how we can consider these orders to go south, to go elsewhere, because we know that there is no safe place in Gaza and there's no way out. We're seeing families, children, mothers, people dragging rags, all of their possessions, wandering in circles. They're walking around in circles. They seem like trapped animals, but we're talking about human beings. So I would like to ask Professor Riccardi how we can consider these transfer, millions of people that are being transferred or being moved north to south and then south to east, and they're being stacked in schools that are being targeted by the bombings, even though they are schools. So this second order to go even more south, to go even further, going to Rafah, how can we consider this within the framework of international law? And then I would also like to tell Youssef Hamdouna that there is a public opinion that follows closely with apprehension what is happening. There are millions of people all over the world that do not accept this double standards, and you mustn't feel that you have been left alone, because not everyone is indifferent. There are countries and governments that are trying to do something. I know it's not enough, but these slaughters, these massacres are not being accepted by everyone, and I would just like you to know that. Thank you.
Excuse me, if we are done, may I leave?
La professoressa.
Sì, grazie. Ringrazio l'onorevole.
Thank you to Boldrini, who asked me this question, and this is an issue which I shortly mentioned in my initial presentation. So when it comes to international law and to occupation, I was referring to this issue in general terms. This is basically what the occupying power can do, and you also always have to bear in mind and 2 points: the needs of the civil population and the need to uphold the rights, human rights. So you need to balance these 2 things, and this is reflected in the rules. So the evacuation of the civil population is usually banned by international law, unless this is absolutely necessary to guarantee the protection of these people, or to, for instance, evacuate a theater. And this is what Article 49 of the Geneva Convention sets forth. So there is indeed the possibility to evacuate the civil population, but upon 2 conditions. Evacuation has to be on a temporary basis, and secondly, these evacuations need to comply with the interest of the civil population. What does this mean? Basically, the humanitarian international law says that the evacuation must not mean evacuating the population beyond the national borders. So part of this evacuation is leading part of these people beyond borders. And then the occupying power has to guarantee that the evacuees have to be hosted in the centers which comply with basic standards of hygiene, of security, safety, food, and water. This is something that the occupying force has to comply with. The families must not be split, and then these people have to be accompanied back to their homes after the operation has taken place. If this does not happen, not only are we violating the Article 49 of the Geneva Convention and the customary law, but mention has to be made also the violation of the arbitrary transfer. This means that the people who are being evacuated because they respond to an ethnic cleansing strategy, apartheid policy, or conflict, armed conflict, or general punishment criteria. These are criteria which have been set forth on the guiding principles of the internal displacement of the UN. Furthermore, let me also add that when it comes to the individual criminal law consequences, this may refer to a war crime, and refer to Article 8 of the International Criminal Court, and an investigation now is underway on events that are unfolding in Palestine. And so we have to refer to the crime against humanity also when it comes to the evacuation of these people, if we show that the evacuees didn't have any other options, real options, because willingly having moved from one area to the other was due to the threat of the armed force, and so the crime offender wants these people to move from one area to the other, or so. This is one of the issues that have been dealt with by the International Criminal Court for when it comes to crimes against humanity in Yugoslavia. Thank you.
Detto e anche per.
Thank you for your words. Thank you, everyone.